Okay.
Hey, what is up, y'all? Welcome to, well, I guess cocktail hour, our second cocktail hour that we've had here. My mic keeps acting up. Sorry about that.
Hey,
So,
brother.
cheers to everybody out there watching. I'm your
Cheers.
host, Edward Euler. Happy to be joined tonight by a good friend of mine and acclaimed board game designer, war game, combat simulation designer, as well as political
Oh
game
yeah, we got it all.
designer, Mark Herman. So, Mark, thanks for hanging out tonight, man.
Hi everybody.
All right. So, first off, Mark, what are you drinking?
Uh, I am drinking a Balvenie 12 year neat.
Okay.
I pour
Nice.
myself 2 fingers. That's not too bad, you know. I won't get I won't get hammered.
Good. You'll notice mine's very, very green.
It is green.
It's actually somewhat healthy up until you put the gin in it. So
It's
there's
got
a
like
there,
a celery and
no,
vodka.
no, 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 no. This is
It's like it's going,
there's a vegan restaurant that is here in town that that serves this drink minus the alcohol, and I basically backwards engineered it. What it is 2 parts apple juice, 1 part pineapple juice, a handful of cilantro, and a jalapeno in a blender.
the jalapeno in the that's what makes it green,
The,
obviously.
yeah, and the cilantro, and then put it over some Bombay Sapphire, and here we
Everything
go.
tastes good with Bombay Sapphire.
Seriously, oh, that's so good. It's spicy.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow, that's hot. Oh, it's so good. Good stuff. All right, so yeah, let's start off. How are you and the family doing? First off.
Thank God. My wife and I are sheltering in right up the block. We're in Midtown East, so basically, just how many blocks? 10 blocks that way is New York, NYU, Langone, Bellevue, and Mount Sinai, which is more or less the center of horror.
Right.
Uh, Sadly, it just mind 777 people died down the block yesterday. I mean, it's like what?
Wow.
So my wife and I have been sheltering in place. I used to do a lot of this kind of pandemic crisis gaming, exercises, and so we started sheltering in place back in the end of February.
Oh,
So
wow.
I have
Okay.
basically been out of circulation on the world, other than I had to go, other than some very essential moves twice. I have been in this apartment. Luckily my wife and I like each other, so it's going along okay. And
Seriously, that way it's not, what was it, 770? That way it wasn't 778. Not to make light of it,
yeah, of
please.
course.
Nobody out
Yeah,
there.
but
I'm
it would have
just,
been it
just
would have
saying.
been tough. It would have been tough.
Right.
And this is Manhattan, so God bless the delivery people and the grocers and people that don't ever get the real, besides the doctors and all that. That's ridiculous stuff. But I give as much credit to the delivery people and the grocers who keep I get delivered food delivered to the house, and it gets delivered to the front of the building, and somebody puts it into an elevator, comes up to my place, I take it out, and so my wife is an amazing cook. So and also right before this, I actually bought a rowing machine. I realized that this is going to be a long stay, and I can't not exercise for a year.
Right.
So I row every day, work out. I actually lost 7 pounds. So the 7 pounds I couldn't lose, I finally lost.
that, oh, the irony, right?
Stress is stress,
Oh, don't I know? I hear you.
That's right.
So, all
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm glad to hear. So that's you and the wife. What about the rest of the family?
Oh,
Because we
so
went out to the Cape and met some of
well,
your.
first off, yeah, well, you met my daughter. So that daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter are sheltering very safely in Los Angeles,
Okay.
and they got a nice place. And again, delivery. They haven't been out of their house, but they're all safe. And my son moved back from San Jose just before this happened, and he's in Brooklyn about maybe, I mean, as the crow flies, probably 5 miles from here. But we talk to everybody by FaceTime every day.
Good.
It's the way of the world now.
It really
I,
is. Whether it's
I,
FaceTime, Zoom, Skype here.
I have every single software package on this computer. This microphone and this camera now are set up, and I mean, I've turned my life into online gaming and working on games and writing. That's what I'm doing now for my life until, maybe, I don't know, I'm guessing until January.
It's going to be a while, definitely. I mean, word just came out yesterday. Yeah. Origins got postponed to September.
Oh, yeah.
I even think that's ambitious. I really do, because
I give up. I sort of said to Carol's my wife. I said to Carol, I said, I'm looking at how can I look, a year of my life is an important part, especially when you're older. But I want to make sure this year is not, I was reading something. Isaac Newton was escaping the plague, right? And in that, I think it's like 1645 or something like that. And so in that year, he invented gravity, optics, and calculus. So, had a good year.
It was solid. It was solid.
Solid.
Better than most.
Solid performance. Now, I'm not going to come anywhere close, but I am going to there's a couple of, games I'm going to finish, and I'm going to write a lot of articles, and that's what I'm doing for the year. And
All right.
And at some point, they'll let me out of house arrest,
Seriously. Okay. I would be remiss since you opened the door on that. What games you working on?
Well, what's today? Did they come out today? Anyway, you'll see on the P500 I haven't looked at my email.
Over on GMT, today. For those that don't know.
Oh, yeah. The P500 for GMT.
Yep.
Did it come out today? I don't know. I didn't look in a little while, but Pacific War is the reprint of Pacific War is going to go on the P500. Either did it today or Monday, whenever it's going to be. And I'll tell you, what's interesting is it is easier for me to design a game from scratch than it is to go back and take apart Pacific War and then republish it. But
why?
I got time. That's a good. I'll have a good answer, but it's going to be all right. We got time.
You going anywhere?
No. This is it. This is the highlight of my day right now.
All right then.
So Pacific War is like a time machine to 1985. So I was 31 years old. I had a 2-year-old and running victory games. And this game, I threw my then heart and soul into. And quite frankly, it's one of those games. It's a very, very deep simulation. And of course, I might have spent the last 35 years reading a few more books on the topic. So
sure.
I'm literally going through every single scenario and updating the order of battles, and which is a lot of work in itself. And I even found, I actually tweeted out a picture of, I had a box in the location I recovered.
I saw that. I saw this tweet. Yes.
I have all my original notes from 35 years ago, totally intact. I was stunned, but there it was. So I've been reorganizing all that old data so I can use it again, just to see what I had done. 35 years is a couple of years. I might have forgotten a few things.
Right. Yeah. You may have slept between then and now.
I didn't do a Rip Van Winkle. So, it's good to know, why did I rate that ship? Well, I have all the ships with all the numerical ratings and how I derived them, which I had forgotten how I did it. But now I have I can say, okay, I either agree or don't agree, but actually I did a pretty good job on them. So taking it apart, cleaning it up. Now it's going to be, if you knew how to play Pacific War back in 1985, you can play the 2021 to, I don't know when it'll come out.
Right.
Actually in the market, because of all the problems with the supply chain. California shut down, so nothing comes into the GMT warehouse, and nothing goes out of the GMT warehouse. So,
And I think everyone's understanding of that. So.
Well, you get arrested.
Well, hey, take it serious, right?
Yeah, it's a serious thing. With that whole thing shut down, it's backing up the system. So they don't want more games coming into Oakland that they have to store in Oakland, and then it costs money. So
sure, everything's
kind of off for a little while. But Gene's talked about all that in his his various things.
Mm-hmm.
But Pacific War. So I'll finish it. In 2020, and it'll go through, and the art, and because of, this was the third time pays for all, if you like the Tolkien phrase. First MMP, actually this thing even started because of MMP, and they kind of lost interest. This goes back I can't remember how many years. This goes back like 8-9 years ago. They got interested. So I said, screw it, I don't care. I didn't publish it with them. And then Nuts came along and they wanted to do it. And then finally, I couldn't get a hold of them. And then, like literally 3 years after I couldn't get a hold of them, they come back. We thought you knew that we weren't going to do it. I said, I sent you an email. Can you just say, can you just tell me? I keep telling people I used to be able to read minds when I was 16, but I lost that ability. So so finally I said, you know what? I was kind of pissed off. I said, this is crazy. So I called up Gene. He said, I want it. Great. So it's home. It will get done now. I mean, assuming that people want to buy it. It'll be a one-time collector's edition, but it's a time machine. It's not a game I would have designed now. It's a game I designed then.
Because you had more time and
No, it's just not a matter of time. I think that if you were looking for a light war game, don't buy this. Don't do it. If you're looking for a very detailed game system that covers the land, air, and sea of the Pacific, and with all the detail and nuance, night actions, torpedoes, I mean the whole goddamn thing, then this is what you want.
Okay. All right.
But don't go here. So what I don't want to, I'll tell you, and I'm warning anybody who sees this, if you buy Pacific War and then you write on BGG something like, I didn't realize it was going to be so complicated. Let me tell you, this is the height of complicated, okay? Don't go there. If you like, nice, airy, kind of, if you like my Gettysburg game, if you like my Waterloo game, and that's kind of like, oh, that's enough of a war game for me, don't go it. I don't need you to buy it. I don't want people unhappy. I don't want to oversell it. I'm just being very straight up. This is like think about the apex of what an SPI victory game simulation would be. That's what Pacific War is.
Wow.
And that turns you on, and a lot of people did turn a lot of people on. Then just go all in. You have there'll be 30 scenarios that play from 15 minutes to 100. Well, the whole, there are a lot of 3-hour scenarios that you can play this thing. It'll hit the table. You can play it. I've only played the campaign, the whole war, 3 times. That takes forever. And so, although now it's a good time. If you have an old copy of Pacific War and you kept saying, I always wanted to play the strategic scenario, now's the time.
I mean, seriously, it's like a Snickers commercial, right? Not going anywhere for a while? There you go. Play Pacific War. So there you go.
The game that's behind you, the reason I did Empire of the Sun was I did want to fight the war. Oh, you're saying hi to Jess or something?
No. I'm pointing at Empire of the Sun right here. I just I get my left and right backwards when it's behind me. So there you go.
So Empire of the Sun is why I designed Empire of the Sun, because playing the strategic scenario in Pacific War is not really. I did it 3 times in my life so far. I'll do it one more time for this, but it's not really credible. But Empire of the Sun is meant you to fight the war in a long afternoon, and that's why I did Empire of the Sun, and that's why I play Empire of the Sun a lot, because I like fighting the war. But if you want to fight the Guadalcanal invasion, and you want to fight the Battle of Coral Sea in great detail, this is your game.
Okay, so you don't even have to worry about playing the whole kit and caboodle. You could just break out the one battles that you're in the mood for.
The campaign scenarios are we used to do tournaments of this thing at WBC for a decade, so it's very playable. It's a very logical, playable game. It's got a lot of great tension, but if you want this to be the whole war, it will let you do it. It's just, it's going to be, it's like 100 hours or something. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Takes a long time. But,
all right.
But the campaign scenarios, which been playing for 35 years, there are 3-hour campaign scenarios that are quite good. I particularly like the Guadalcanal campaign scenarios, like my favorite.
Why? Why is it your favorite?
Well, it's got all the elements of land, air, and sea, and the reaction, and the planes, and the big battles. But 3 hours.
Okay, makes sense.
I can do it.
All right. So you talked about, because half the things that I see you tweeting about are Empire of the Sun. You don't get sick of that game?
Huh?
You don't get sick of that game? No. You don't get tired of playing it ever?
No. I don't know what to tell you. I got to tell you something. So let's talk about what I've been doing lately. So,
okay, let's. Sure.
So what I like, so a lot of people are very into, look, your channel, God bless you, and I watch, every other day you're playing a new game, right? That means you're learning a new game, and you're trying to get into it. And, I know you're much smarter than I am, but
no.
But you only get so good at playing a game once or twice.
Oh, totally, 100%.
Right.
That's the case.
And,
yes.
I'm just from a different generation. I was born in a black and white world, and so we used to get a game which would be all of our disposable income, and we'd play the game for a year.
Right.
And I remember my mother going to me one day, "Boy, you have a lot of games." At that time, I had 4.
Now, don't get me wrong. If it wasn't for the show, I might not be that restricted on this, but it would be a lot worlds tighter than it is now. I would be able to, because there are games to where after we stream it or we review it on the podcast or whatever it is,
Right.
I would love to be able to go back and, wow, I really want to be able to play that, but you
Yeah.
don't have time. And
So-
unfortunately,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. So if I didn't have the show, I absolutely would want to play the hell out of some of these games. Yes.
Yeah. So the games I've been playing the hell out of was, Uli Blenneman from Spielwerk.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So Uli gets a hold of me and he says, do you want to play PAX Premier? So I said, sure, I'll do anything to play. So now all of a sudden there's a Wednesday 1:00 game, the same 5 guys. It's Uli, this very nice guy named Stefan Barth, I think his name is. I don't know him, but he's a very nice man. Then my good friend Terry Coleman and my good friend Jeff Engelstein. And the 5 of us play PAX Premier Wednesday at 1:00. Although they're starting to go, maybe we should play another 5-player game. I'm going, no, let's. And I'm actually starting to get good at PAX Premier. I actually think, Cole, I'm looking for you, boy. I'm coming for you, Cole.
First or second edition are you guys playing?
It is the second edition.
Okay. All right.
But we're playing it on Vassal, so it's a Vassal set, which is beautiful.
Yep.
But it's like I get to the point now I actually know the cards. Like when a card goes, oh, that's a good card. That's not a. I'm now understanding the cards and why I would go for certain cards, certain strategies, which is nice. That's a different kind of fun, right? I've been playing a lot. Empire of the Sun. I've been playing that continuously, and in fact, we just started another match on CSW Consum World. I posted the first move for South Pacific scenario today, and tomorrow from 9 to 1, I'm playing. I agreed to do this. I mean, it's just more of an event, but we're playing. A whole bunch of us are playing. I think the first turn of Here I Stand. That's going to be like. That'll be like done in December, I suspect.
Right.
But we're going to do that tomorrow.
So is it all asynchronous on the Here I Stand stuff?
No, we do everything we're doing is like this. We hook up the Skype for the sound. Some people put their videos on or not. It doesn't matter. We're using it for the sound, and we're playing Vassal in real time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it feels like. Look, I know these guys. These are the guys I game with in New York City, and then I also have a 1:00 game on Sundays that I host. So I actually host one, and the other ones I'm playing in somebody else's hosting. But I host a 1:00 game on Sunday with a bunch of guys, and we've been playing PAX Premier also. But we're going to probably move it to some other thing. So, and then another group of my friends, there was a Steam sale on a bunch of games. We all got Through the Ages, which is also a great game.
Yes, it is. One of my favorites.
So we're playing. So I'm trying to focus on just a few games. And just get good at them. Why not? This way, like I don't have to keep looking at rules. We shoot it up, we start playing. And that's been fun too.
There's a special kind of joy that comes from not having to, let me look that up or whatever, and just sit and play.
I don't need to look up. I'm pretty good at absorbing rules, but especially when I play it over and over again. So I haven't looked at a rule book playing PAX or Through the Ages or. Of course, Empire of the Sun. I mean, it's all in the RAM now. So, and when we play, by the way, we're not playing cutthroat. I'll say to somebody, "Oh, you know that," and I'll say, like, by the way, if this is what's going to happen unless you block him because he's going to win the game, like in the next 2 rounds. And I always go, "Oh, by the way, the deck is at this point." There's going to be a dominance card coming out within the next 3 cards. So
yeah, in my opinion, that's how you should be, because if I'm going to beat you, I want to beat you because I beat you, not because you forgot about something.
So I always tell people, look, if I'm annoying you, if I annoy you, I'll stop. They go, no, you got the game down. Just keep telling us when something's going to go off the rails. So that's what I've been doing.
Good stuff.
I've been fine with that.
Yeah, I would like to play more Churchill, but after having beat you and Jess in the same game, I pretty much retired from Churchill because that's about as good as it gets. I was like, no, okay, I love the game, but too bad I can't play that anymore. All right, so
actually, there's a couple of guys. Churchill and I see Churchill and Pericles getting a bunch of play now. Because people are doing this now that people are doing the Skype thing. They're multiplayer games are in again. You don't have to go to a convention, right? Everybody's got the time to, play a few hours and play a game.
It's definitely it's just a weird world right now with everything. And so since we transitioned to where either I'm going to do just solo games, possibly 2-player with Jess. Jess is currently upstairs streaming some stuff, Codenames with CGE and Mark Street from Dice Tower and stuff. And she and I might do some two-player things, but other than that, if we're going to do multiplayer, and we're going to starting next week, it's all going to be over Skype, and unless I can figure out how to implement Zoom, but I think it's going to be on Skype. So it's going to be interesting to see that as long as there isn't hidden information, that we would be able to I'd set up the game here, the whole 9 yards, and then people would say what they're doing. I move their pieces, whatever. And, like Mark's up here, you're up in the top right-hand corner. So I have your tableau up there or whatever. However,
see, that's where Vassal. So I believe that Vassal will let you do a screen. I don't know about Skype. I know Zoom will let you do a screen capture. So you could actually see the board while talking.
See, and here's the thing. We actually have talked about that with my local group, right? Talked about how do we go about actually streaming some of these games. That there's Tabletop Simulator, there's Tabletopia, there's Vassal, there's Board Game Arena, there's Yucata. There's a whole bunch of either sites or apps.
Yeah.
And I'm of the mind that online implementations, I guess, would be okay.
They vary in quality,
right? And for me, if I own the game, and it's possible for me to set it up here at the table, I don't mind doing the maintenance of here. I will move your piece here. I will do this.
Yeah. That's fine too. I mean, that would work also. But again, it's the fact that I can see and hear you, so I know what I'm doing. You can see the board while doing it. Yeah. You got to be able to see the board.
100%. And the fact that you and I aren't on delay, just the chat is on the 20-second or 30-second delay, then there's no pause there. You're like, oh, are you moving here? No, there? Okay, right. And whatever, right? Yeah. Obviously, when it comes to some of the bigger war game stuff, that's probably going to have to be over on Vassal or something like that. So speaking of which, yes. You and I had talked about right before we went live with this about you and I maybe doing a teaching game of Empire of the Sun.
Sure, I'm happy to do it.
Yes, please, because if there's anybody that I would rather, you gave me and Jess when we were out at the Cape at your house, you gave us
10 minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say 10, 15-minute overview, and you were like, okay, so now you basically know the gist of how to play Empire of the Sun. And I was like, I've always heard it was way harder than that. So yeah, that was awesome.
See, so what we would do though is I think we would maybe you can get a hold of a copy. Well, the Vassal set's available, but we'll play South Pacific. It's a small scenario.
Mm-hmm.
See, the way I teach a lot of games, but particularly Empire of the Sun, is I think of like concentric circles, and there's an concentric circle of Empire of the Sun, which is how do you play a card and go after somebody, launch an offensive. And that's what I showed you and Jess in like 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was. The next concentric circle is the supply and activation rules, like, who can, how do I block you or stay from being blocked, that kind of stuff. And then the third concentric circle is all of the, what's going on with, the overall strategy of the game. There's the war in Europe, and there's like, do I fight in China, Burma, India theater? Or do I attack here? And, what's the right balance and trade-offs? That's the third one. So what I find is South Pacific, by being a smaller map and situation, allows you to focus on the inner circle and one out. That the third ring is very lightly touched on, but it because you have less cards, less terrain, less things to look at, it becomes mentally tractable.
Okay, yeah.
The rules are identical, but you sort of cut out the space. And by putting you in that smaller room, you can say, okay, now I get it. And a lot of people, you'll have to excuse me 1 second. One thing is I don't have coronavirus, but I do have allergies. And
I get sneezing fits on occasion with my allergies, so totally understand. Yeah. Back before the isolation thing became, a lot more serious than or less. It wasn't as serious. I would sneeze in public, and I'd like start looking around like people gonna start, running away from me just because my allergies. But I get that.
So anyway, so I would. So maybe one of you guys, or I can get Roger McGowan to mail you and say my problem is I have copies, but I can't get to a mailbox. So
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah. I
I'm
mean,
just gonna go down and say,
I don't think that'll be a problem. So we'll be able to figure that out. That'd be awesome. I would love to. I would love to do that.
oh, there we go.
I mean, there's nobody better to do that with
Well, I
than
think I
you.
know the game better than anybody. Yeah.
So, I mean, not all designers are that way, though, with their games, you know? Sometimes they're like, yeah, it's been so long, I don't remember all the rules on some
Well,
things.
to be fair, I mean, if you sprung one of my really old ones on me, I'd have to look at the rules. I mean,
Right.
I know how to play it broadly, but I wouldn't remember all the rules. But all of my, I mean, Washington's War, Empire of the Sun, for the people I could play, I don't have to look at anything to play
Right.
those. That would
Well,
be,
on that note, no, so another thing that we had talked about is that you're basically going to be sheltering in place for the better part of a year, if not more, until
they got to stick a vaccine in my arm.
right.
So pretty much.
So this may not be practical. Okay, the one that, and I warned you I was going to spring something on you.
Okay, I'm here.
That
What do you got? Next war or something?
not quite, but I would love.
Oh, I don't know how to play that.
Well, I would love to sit down, and I've promised to do the smallest scenario in this game
Uh,
on the show, and you were the first person I thought of to.
I have to get the rule. I gotta be honest with you. So I have not. It's actually around the corner. I have a
That's World in Flames
Harry-
for those that are listening
Harry
and not
Rowland.
watching.
The designer of that is a guy named Harry Rowland, who's an Australian guy.
Yep.
I haven't seen Harry in forever, but I think we communicated a few times over the years. But old friend, and he gave me. I have an original copy of an unpunched original copy of World in Flames.
Right.
And every so often I'd see him at a convention. He'd throw me like the latest, the new airplanes or some other pack of counters. So I got a bunch of stuff in a box over there. I played it once with Harry, like when it came out. So I have no idea how to play it.
No, I hear you. It's just
But if we got the rules and you got the game, what the heck? I'm always up for a game. What the heck? I'll try.
All
But,
right.
I won't be. It's a good. And again, if you ask me like a game that would be, if you were to say to me, what's your go-to European war game, which that is World in Flames is the whole, it's got, the whole world.
Right.
I would say that I would play Krieg or one of its, antecedents before any other European game. If I was going to play a European game, that's a good game. I really like that one. That's a Kaczynski and Alan Emmerich title. But that's a good one.
I've heard of it, and that's the extent of my knowledge on that one.
Yeah. Well, but World in Flames is. I mean, that's hard to do even face to face.
It started as a lark. It started as oh, you can do this, and I basically
yeah.
I'm one of those people that tell me I can't do it, and I'm gonna prove to you I can.
Well, okay. Well, I look. I would never tell a Marine what he can't do.
Exactly. See, so I have committed to doing that. That was pre shelter in place, but by the end of the year, my goal is to try and get that stream. So
but
all
I
right,
can do
good
the other
deal.
two much quicker.
So what else? What else have you been doing? I mean, obviously rowing, working on games, and drinking scotch. Anything else?
Actually, this is the first scotch I've had. I don't drink a lot.
I don't either. My Bombay Sapphire, I kid you not, I've had a bottle of Bombay Sapphire since I was in the Marine Corps, and I got out of the Marine Corps 3 days before 9/11.
There you go. So drink
yeah, right.
Yeah. No, the last time I had Carol and I had a glass of wine each about a couple of weeks ago, and but I figured if I'm going to. You said it was a cocktail hour. I figured I had to have a cocktail. So.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, that's. I mean, you don't have to, but
Well, I
but
felt
yeah.
like I said, what the heck, I'll sit here and drink, mellow myself out while I'm sitting here talking to Edward,
There you go. I appreciate it. So, so how are things going with GMT as far as on your end of things? Because you talked about working on Pacific War and everything.
Everything with GMT goes great. I mean, they're like my family. These are like my best friends. So everything goes great with GMT. They're doing. Luckily, they're in very good shape. So I mean, they're paying their people, and we're all just trying to get through this. Versailles is 1919 was done and is already in the printer in China. That's so at some point a box of Versailles 1919 is just going to that'll. I kept telling my I was just joking around. I don't want to use gallows humor, but that's going to be the only other. I did 2 games that were already published, and this was going to be like my biggest year of publishing. But now that's not going to happen. But we had France 1944 come out, and Waterloo 1815 came out in January, and Versailles would have come out in a month or so. So Versailles might get published and shipped to America in a month or so, but I don't know when somebody can take it out of a shipping container and stick it into a thing and put it in the post office. So I don't know when that's going to happen.
All right.
But the game is already at the printers, and I suspect it'll be in the United States. I don't know what's going on in China with production, but at some point it'll show up here by the summer, I'm guessing. But until they can get people in the warehouse to open shipping containers and do all the labeling and all that that's a whole operation. So that's who knows when that's going to happen.
I mean, on the one hand,
but it'll happen this year. I know I'm comfortable that at some point this year, Versailles will be in people's hands. I just can't tell you beyond that. And then everything else I'm doing has all been like Rebel Fury was well along the way. That's the Civil War battles, like based on the Gettysburg system. But who knows? But, I mean, I'll finish it. Well, I've been reading. Well, actually, right now I'm heavily into the Pacific War right now. But Rebel Fury is more than half done. I'm just waiting for some more maps from my map guy, Rick Barber. I was going to actually reach out to him probably tomorrow, see how he's doing, and see how the wilderness maps are coming. But that's the only thing that's really holding that project up at this point. I've got most of the research is done, and I've already got Chancellorsville and Chickamauga are totally done. Working on Chattanooga, as a parallel thing. I'll get Fredericksburg won't be much. That's really a solitaire, training scenario, and then it's just the wilderness, and then I'm done with that one. But then it goes into art. But everything's slowed down, so that's a 2021 thing at this point.
Okay. What's your favorite period to model? Because, like you said, you're doing a ton of research for each of these games, so you got to have a favorite period of time. Like for me, it would be ancient Rome.
So, I have sort of, most historians know a lot about something, right?
Sure.
I'm really a historian who's a game designer. So, there's like 5 periods that I'm very, very deep in. One is Aegean Sea, the Greeks,
right.
Peloponnesian War period. I studied that in college, and I have an ancient history degree. The Roman Republic is another one. Know a lot about that, from my old, my research and everything. Then it's like the wars of the United States, the Revolution, the War of 1812, the Civil War,
right?
And, World War I, all of the wars of America. But particularly the World War II and particularly the Pacific. So, I've got some very deep areas, and then every so often I've done things in other areas. But there's, Versailles, is a good one. I'm really more into like the political military history these days. If I had my druthers, Pacific War is a deep war game. I mean, there's zero politics in it.
Right.
Empire of the Sun's got a fair amount has a touch of politics in it with the political will. Metric for victory. But Versailles and Churchill and Pericles are all political military games. Versailles is actually a political game. It's got almost zero military in it. It's really a negotiation and issues game. And we're going to do follow-ons to that.
Is that where you're trending? Like, is that what interests you the most?
Yeah, these days.
Okay.
My interest, evolved, but I think in all of my years, and I'm also still doing Department of Defense gaming. They call me, they call me up and they say, "Hey, can you help us out?" And I do. So here, give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you something.
Okay, good. Because I wasn't gonna let that go without diving into that. And we're gonna talk about the stuff that's in the background back there too, by the way.
Yeah. So I don't know if you could. You can see this pretty well, right?
Yeah.
So we get that. There we go. War in the China Seas. This was a game I did for the Department of Defense. It's there's maybe I don't think there's 100 copies in existence.
Okay.
And And the secretary, the deputy secretary of defense has actually played it. I got rules questions from him.
That's
And
amazing.
and and the Secretary of Defense has looked at it, but he felt it was a bit much. He's a busy guy. So, but it's been used. But so
So
I'm
how do they hold on? How do they use these?
well. The idea was, all right. So obviously, China has a military, and they developed a thing they call it's an area denial strategy. It's like they have these islands. They sort of taken over the South China Sea. I think everybody knows that more or less. The Spratly Islands, the Paracels.
Right.
There's been all these disputes with the Vietnamese, the Filipinos, the Indonesians, Singapore over these various reefs and islands. And then you have Taiwan, right? That's a big issue. And then they have these other islands, like the Senkaku Islands and all that. They're sort of, for a while, the Chinese were saying that they tried to put like FAA regulation. You can't fly through the airspace of these islands that belong to Japan unless you talk to us first. So that was a big hash up. So there's a lot of disputes in there. And, and so the idea is to show what their capabilities are. So the game shows, the U.S. military and theirs and how that might work out. But what I did was, which was kind of like something they weren't used to, is I wanted, since I was a teaching, it's meant for like use with West. It's unclassified, so you can use it with West Point and Annapolis. It's for military officers to use to learn. And in the main scenario is a solitaire scenario where you're the Chinese and you get attacked by the U.S. So they actually have to manipulate the Chinese forces to stop the United States, which is not how they usually think about these things. And that's been really a big winner from a learning perspective. So it's a teaching, learning thing.
Okay. So to put them in the shoes of the other side so that they can expect the unexpected type thing.
And also understand, oh, so that's what that missile does, and that's what that submarine's for. And, they get to understand how it all fits together. That's hard to, you could get a million briefings, but until you move the pieces, there's something about, oh, I didn't realize that, or oh, wow, look at that. And, so it's self-discovery. And because it's solitaire, senior people or even anybody can play the game. It is not just a solitaire game. You can play it teams and all that stuff. But if you're playing it solitaire, you can have a senior person explore the game and the information without being embarrassed in front of anybody. That's really always the big deal, right?
So how do you go about designing something like that, though? Like, how do you get the information? Is it just out there like Jane's, or is it Jane's? Is that
well,
who does
Jane's
it?
is part of it, but did you ever see anything like?
Hold on, let me look. Military balance. What the hell is that? No, I have no idea.
So this is a paperback. You can see it's a paperback, right?
Right.
It has everybody in the world's forces. It's all unclassified, but that little book.
How
much do you think that book would cost? If you
I wouldn't have a clue.
Make up a number. Tell me a number.
$200.
Oh, you're in the right ballpark. It's $350.
Okay. All right. Wow.
And it's compiled every year by an organization called IISS, which is the International Institute for Strategic Studies out of London.
Okay.
And the $350 actually is you can buy it, but joining the organization costs the same amount as buying the book. So
yeah. So it's a no-brainer.
Remember,
sure.
You got a copy.
Right.
I haven't been a member in a long time, but every time I'm in Washington, I'll see somebody say, "Hey, you just got the new edition. You're using the 2019 anymore?" He goes, "No, I don't need it because they go out of date. You don't. There's no value in looking at one from 10 years ago, right?"
Sure.
So I'm always able to scrounge a copy from somebody along the way. So
see, I see that as thrifty. Like,
well, yeah, I'm not going to spend $350 for it, but
right.
But so you say, where do you get the information? Well, you get it from that, and there's a ton of unclassified journals. And when I did the project, there were people. I did it with a group called the Center for Naval Analysis, which is a government think tank out of D.C. That's who I did it with. Peter Pearl is a name you might know. He's there, and that's who brought me in. And they had a really good guy that I know named Michael Markowitz. And Michael, he's an expert at all these weapon systems. So he got, Michael, give me the numbers for this missile. And it's all unclassified because he knows whatever. And so, it's a collaborative effort, but I did the design and Peter did the development and Mikey did the numbers. So
that's amazing. So basically the Department of Defense pays you to design games for them.
They do on occasion, yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that's really cool.
And it's a part of my, In fact, on Thursday, I'm giving a lecture at my old alma mater, Georgetown, on war game. My experience as a war game commercial designer and a Pentagon designer, and what was that like? So that's what I'm going to talk about. And I heard they already have 100 people signed up, so it'll be a big deal. I'll do it online, of course, like
Sure,
this.
sure.
But
That's awesome.
but it's a part of my life that I'm very interested in, so I get to still, I pay attention to the stuff. I get to look at things and go, oh, and it has relevance to me still. So yeah, it's nice. Still do a little bit of that.
All right, so crazy question, because I know there's going to be somebody out there that's curious about this. So that game that you just showed that we were talking about, like, can anybody get that? Like, or is that just that's owned by the DoD, right?
It's owned by the DoD.
Yeah.
I think some guy who had knew somebody got a copy, but I was surprised. But it's not like it's not like illegal to have a copy. Or anything.
Sure. No, I understand. It's just you can't get it because there's only so many that exist, and
anytime the government, and we did it so that it's a print and one of those print and play houses,
print on demand stuff, right? Yeah.
So every so often, I guess they order 50 copies, and they're expensive because you're only getting 50 copies.
Of course.
And they give them, and they don't sell them. They give them to organizations who request copies. So, and I don't get royalties. It's not like a royalty thing. I got paid to do it, and it belongs to the government. So I don't have.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really.
I just answer rules questions. That's all.
That's awesome. All right. So what else? Okay, you had mentioned Pacific War. So what else? What else?
Rebel Theory. Rebel Theory.
Right.
So, well, at that point, I've got like always, I have around the corner is a refrigerator with a magnet holding a list of games that I'm working on. What do I got? Let's see what I got. Here's my current to-do list. What do we got working on here? Let's see. After this, I'm going to be doing a Roman Civil War game.
Oh yes, please.
Yep. That will be a classic CDG. So again, maybe you said to me, what areas are you expert in? Well, that's an area I know very, very. I already did with my now deceased but old buddy Richard Berg. We did the Great Battles of Caesar.
Right.
So this will be the sort of strategic level look at that, and then there's I have and I think the next one in the Churchill series will be a game called Triumvir, which will be Julius Caesar versus Crassus versus Pompey.
I take my money. I'm in. I 100%. See, that interests me far more than Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin. That I am all over.
So there's like I said, here's the list. It's a piece of paper. It sits on my.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that. All right, good.
Yeah, I mean, I have to have a list. But I'm just going to keep designing games, and if I don't get sick and die from the coronavirus, then I'll make more games.
Well, please don't. And I don't mean that just because I want that triumvirate.
I am being like insanely careful, which
Good.
is exactly right.
Good.
Taking no chances. Nothing's going to happen to me as long as I can follow unless they drag me out of here, I'll be fine. So
Right.
this place has been. There's nobody been in this place, my wife and I, so long that any bacterial, and we've washed it so many times. The place is, we're like the safest place in the world. As long as it keeps showing up, I'm safe. I mean, I'm doing that fail-safe bunker existence, like you see that. But we decided though that what we're actually living through is an entire season of The Twilight Zone as one telling. I mean,
seriously.
I mean, I feel like that guy. I watch The Twilight Zone. I'm watching The Twilight Zone, and I go, this is not someone like what I'm going through right now.
I mean, I on occasion, like I'll go out and I'll go for a walk, like just around the block or something. And there's just nobody out here except when it's a really nice day. Yeah. We had one day last week. What is this, Friday? I guess earlier this week.
Yeah.
And I went for a drive just to have that wind go through my hair and, just to breathe fresh air and get some vitamin D, but didn't leave the car type thing, whatever. And we have a lake here in Wakefield it's a beautiful, it really is a really quaint, cute little town. And we have this lake here and it's very popular with folks just walking around the lake, jogging, whatever. And man, it's so frustrating to see how not everybody is taking it as serious as they should, as far as the distancing. And it's just like,
And to Scott Nelson, don't worry, we're not going to run out of toilet paper.
Yes. All right.
It's all good. We're ready.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Clay's here from Capstone. Hey, Clay. He and I were talking about some of your games as well. About when things calm down, me making the trip out to Cincinnati to visit with Clay and his family there. But yeah, it's crazy how it seems people are either taking it completely serious or just completely gaffing it off. And it's the people that are gaffing it off that I think are going to make this go longer. I saw a thing the other day that if we shelter in place through August, and I was like, April, May, June, July, that's 5 months. Wow. And another thing that I hear people talking about is oh, can't wait till things get back to normal, right? Now, I use that term because
New normal, baby.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like normal doesn't necessarily mean going back to the way we were, but normal is in we can get outside of these four walls for the most part. But I wonder how many changes are going to stick from this. I'm curious.
It's interesting to me that so I know so obviously this video experience is going to be permanent. People, families are just using this medium in ways they haven't done before. It's becoming social contact. I see my granddaughters every day, multiple times a day on FaceTime, and we had, we just had Passover. So we just had we did a family Seder on Zoom.
That's
no
awesome.
Kidding. Yeah. We found a 10-minute Seder. We did all the prayers together. And then, of course, my wife's Roman Catholic, so today's Good Friday and Easter. We're going to hook up a lot of people for Easter. Nobody's going to church, but I certainly, we're going to make that happen. So we're still having, some religious interaction.
Right.
We're having social interaction multiple times a day. My daughter holds the phone. She goes, and my granddaughter calls me Anka. I have no idea why. And she goes, "Hi, Anka." I go, "Hey, Sophia, how's it going?" She goes, and my other granddaughter's a little younger, but she even recognizes it, and she'll clap. She sees our face, she starts clapping. That's one of the things she just learned how to do. So, we're interacting, we're being together as best as we can.
And it sounds like you're able to visit with your family more than you would have had this not been going on.
Well, I would have been in California, everybody was coming in for Easter. I mean,
no, I understand that, but I'm saying on a non-holiday, non-special occasion, right?
Well, actually, you got to know my wife. I mean, she talked to my daughter multiple times a day anyway. So.
Oh, all right. Fair enough. All right.
But normally, the baby, my daughter would have taken her to school, and she would have been at gym class or swim class or whatever. So it was a different. She would go work. It was like a different world, right? You're going around. What happened here?
Oh no, we lost this video. You're still here.
Maybe I hit. No, it's me.
Okay, there we go. Hey, welcome back. All right.
No, I think every so often, and it may be something to do. The camera just decides to time out.
It could be if you if you don't hit your mouse or something, keep it active, whatever.
I think it's doing that. So I think that's what happened.
Okay.
But I've had it happen a few times. I just click it and it comes right back.
Yeah.
But and a lot of companies, insisted on face-to-face meetings. I think they're now, like, my son works for Amex, and they kept thinking, well, we got to be able to interact, and now the company will be operating for 3, 4, 5 months with everybody from home, and they're going to go, what do we need all this commercial real estate again for? Why do we need offices? And
that's going to be really interesting now that people have, because I know that there are people out there that love the idea of working from home, and who now have been able to do so for those that can, and they're not going to want to go back to the office. There are going to be other people that don't work well at home and need that.
Well, some jobs technically, I mean, other than now, I've had to postpone doctor's appointments. Doctors actually need to touch your body.
Sure. Right.
Say that kind of stuff. So there's that. So right now, unless you have COVID-19, which is horrible and is often very deadly, a regular doctor's appointment. I've been doing telehealth calls.
Mm-hmm.
My doctor had my yearly physical, but we haven't had blood drawn. Obviously, we haven't really been examined. So we've talked, but that's it. We haven't. that'll all come later at some point,
Sure. Yeah, I actually I met with my psychiatrist online a
Yeah,
couple weeks ago,
yeah.
and thankfully I had my annual checkup and all that at the end of February when before all this really came to a
Oh,
head.
great.
So I don't have to worry about that till next year for the most
Yeah.
part. But yeah,
So
it's
I'm late on mine, but I'm fine. But
apparently you're losing weight.
well, yeah. I mean, work. Like I said, well, what I did was I realized that if I'm going to be inside for a year and I start eating, I'll be a billion pounds. So I just eat twice a day now, and that's just what it. I always knew I could lose weight if I stopped eating, and by cutting,
Weird how that happens.
yeah, you know, I denied food. So I've been eating better than ever, but eating less, and now I don't need as much food. It's funny. I feel much better. I didn't feel bad before, but I actually feel better, so it's fine. Um, and I'm working out because of the rowing machine. I can row, and once the summer comes, I do have a place. Not Cape Cod. That's first of all, if you have a New York State plate on a car and you leave New York State, it's like a plague ship has trying to leave New York. So they stop you. I've been told by people. I mean, it's been on the news. I haven't tried it, but I've heard like Rhode Island, the cops will stop you at the border and say, "What do you turn around? You can't go through Rhode Island."
Wow.
Yeah, I've heard stories like that. I don't know if it's even true, but I don't blame them. Why do the heck,
Sure.
they think
Well,
everybody from here?
it just got announced today, right? That New York, the state of New York, has more cases of COVID than any country on earth.
Yep. I'm
So,
telling you, this is all going on. So this is right. That direction is First Avenue. Make
mhm.
a left turn. You go down to 34th Street. So that's a little less than 18 blocks away. And as I told you, the three main hospitals of Manhattan on the east side, other than New York Presbyterian, which is up on the Upper West Side, the three main hospitals, NYU, Bellevue, and Sinai are right there. And it's a hard, luckily, it looks like it, at least in New York, we're all doing exactly what we're supposed to do. We're staying at home, staying out of each other's way, and the disease is hospitalizations are starting to really drop.
Right.
And that means 2 weeks from now, the deaths will start to drop. It takes about 2 weeks it's a lagging indicator. So it'll get better, but nothing will have changed other than the fact that we've shut down the virus spread for now. But if we all came outside, it'd go right back up again.
See, and that's my biggest fear. As the weather gets better and people are like, oh, everything's fine, we can go easy.
Well, like I said, I know more about this than most, and from my experiences in war. My book has a whole chapter on the once and future bird flu, an entire chapter. I work with the WHO, the UN, and the United States on pandemic responses, and we had Fauci and Navarro, and in fact, if you go to my book, page 223 has a summary from the UN guy Navarro telling you what he learned from playing in the exercise back in 2006. Then
Wow.
the big thing was the avian bird flu, the
H1N1.
H1N1.
Yep.
But they knew that this day was coming. It just didn't know when. And more or less, if I look back on what's going on right now, we did nothing based on all that. I mean, this is just like, oh, look at this, like being run over by a truck and saying now I'm hurt. So a lot of people are going to die still, and that is just a horror show for me. I mean, I'm an American, and any American dying from this just is breaking my heart. It's just breaking my heart, and it just really, it's like I said, until there are three things that will change my behavior, like not leave my apartment or carefully by myself. Right. The testing is just not there. Nobody can tell anybody, and I know I'm hearing that some of the tests. Well, I don't want to start any rumors. So testing has got to be in major. Everybody
Right.
often the whole bit, and we're nowhere near that. Two, there has to be some therapeutics. There has to be something like a Tamiflu. Like if you start getting this thing, they give you you take something, and you're not going to die. That's a big deal. And ultimately a vaccine. And I heard there was over 20 active trials of vaccines. That's unheard of. So this will have an end, and I plan on being alive when it happens.
I appreciate that. As a friend of yours, I would like that. So please.
Yeah, and it's a tough situation here. Like I said, 777 people, I just saw the statistic this morning, died in New York City yesterday. That was yesterday.
That's a crazy number, isn't it?
Before that was 700 and almost the same. I think it was actually a little bit, a couple lower. So the death is just horrendous. if you go down to Park Avenue, they have refrigerator trucks. So you got a very expensive Park Avenue apartment. You look out the door, you're going to see refrigerator trucks with as morgues going up and down the
Wow.
streets. It's a lot of. There's not enough room. They're putting them
Sure.
everywhere.
That's I heard about the mass graves. They're
Well, those are the
digging.
unclaimed. Those are the
Hmm.
unclaimed bodies. There are homeless people who passed away. They don't know who they belong to. They had no ID. Sad as hell. And
Yep.
but we take care of our own. We have a place for them, and
Sure. But still,
it's
last thing on this is
yeah. Let's get to a better topic.
well, Joe asks, do you think New Zealand, which is trying an elimination strategy, has a realistic chance of success?
I'm not a doctor.
Okay, fair enough.
I have what I know is what the three things I told you. Until you can test, until you have a therapeutic, until you have a vaccine, this thing goes on at some level. I mean, that's just how it is.
Right.
How immune anybody is who's gotten it, I have no idea. I've heard all sorts of different stories. I'm not a doctor. I'll tell you, it's actually funny, but it's so I had this guy named Andy Marshall who was my mentor, and he passed away a year ago, February, at the age of 97. And no, I saw him. Yeah, I saw him in February. He died at like the beginning of March. So, but a year ago in 2019. And I love the man. He was like my father after my father passed away. So I went to visit him in February. He had congestive heart failure, and he was on an oxygen tank, and he had an aid, and he was in tough shape, but he
Right.
had a great sense of humor. And so I'm with Andy, and I go, Andy, so how do you feel? And so this is my answer. He goes, I'm not a doctor, but I can read an actuary table. And he was 97, and I sat with him for about 90 minutes. He was exhausted. He hired out,
Sure.
but I hung out with him for 90 minutes. We had an amazing conversation, and I love the guy, and I was pretty sure it was the last time I was ever going to see him, and I was correct. I was going to see him. Well, I would have seen him at the end of March, but he didn't live that long. But that was the next time I was down there because it was down in Washington. So I got so the answer is I can read an actuary table. These are tough times.
Yep.
These are tough.
So I'm pretty good friends with Eric Brocious, who's a big. You might know Eric. I don't
I
know
know the
if-
name. I don't
Okay.
know. I
So
know.
and Eric, he's retired now, but he used to be the head actuary for one of the major insurance companies in the country, like Liberty Mutual type level,
big guy,
and he
big
was
guy.
the head actuary. And so it's interesting to have had discussions with them when all this was starting to kind of kick up. It was fascinating to me to watch this email chain because what we were planning on doing was getting together for a learning game for me of 2038, 18XX in space,
Okay.
and it was going to be me, Joe Huber, Joe Rashana, and Eric Brocious. And now all these guys they're older than I am. I'm 44. I mean, I'm not a spring chicken, but at the same time, I'm not your age, for instance.
65. Yeah.
Right.
I'm
And so
listen,
they're all, I mean, Eric's retired and the other guys are getting close to retirement age as well. And so reading who they've been in contact with and how big the risk is and all that on whether or not we should risk it. And at that point I was like, you know what, fellas, it's not that important. Why don't we just wait? Let's just table it. And then things got really bad, and I'm probably not going to see them for the foreseeable future, unfortunately. But I would rather my friends be around,
Yeah.
and not saying on a selfish point of view, standpoint. Just I would like my friends around,
Yeah.
So,
Look, we're the day you're born, you're on your. Nobody gets, as my father used to say, nobody gets out alive. So
Right.
that's the human condition. So I get that part, but I'm not ready yet.
Right.
And
No,
good
please.
health, and the only thing that can disturb my good health is what's going on. So, like I said, my wife and I are taking this very seriously. We're trying to, we're keeping each other's good spirits up, and I'm working, and I'm hanging out with friends on
Hey,
video
exactly. I think this is so important.
yeah, I don't feel alone, and I have enough. Luckily, my apartment's not teeny tiny that you can see what's going on behind me. This is, by the way, my game design studio. If anybody didn't know, you can see it behind me. That table. Let's see. I got the problem you've got.
There you go. It's there you go. Yeah, there you go.
There. Pointing at that table is holding Pacific Wars on it right now, and then the table beyond it. But you see that TV set? There's another table under that. That's got Empire of the Sun on it. and then
Is it,
around
hold on. Let me interrupt you real quick.
Yeah.
Every time that you and I have touched base, there's been a Empire of the Sun on a table somewhere. Is that just permanent? Just stays?
Kind of, yeah. Maybe, I don't know. I get it.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
Is that a bad thing? I don't know.
No, not at all. I think that's amazing. I think that's fantastic. I love that. I love that that's the case.
So I've been playing Empire of the Sun, for almost 20 years. I designed it 5 years before it came out. So I've been playing it for, over 15 years since publication, but let's call it 18, 19 years in its current form. And so we hold tournaments still. There was a WB World Board Gaming Championship online tournament. And this guy, Chris Crane, who runs the tournament, really nice guy, who now runs the tournaments for me. I used to run them, but I decided I got too many other things going on. So I kind of gave all my tournaments away to other people, unless it's a new, like when Versailles comes out and I actually get the WBC again, I'll run the Versailles tournament for the first year or two, and then I'll give it to somebody. And that's how it
right. Yep. Having gone to that, I'm familiar with how that works. Okay.
So there's a beginner option, which is, if you play the opening, the best scenario is like 1943 or the South Pacific scenario for just a balanced. But if you want to play like the whole campaign, which they were using for the tournament, there's an option, what's called a historical hand. And I created that so that if you're a brand new player to Empire of the Sun, you would start off with 3 really strong cards, and then you would deal out 4 more. So you're going to end up with a good hand no matter what happens, right?
Okay.
And this way you could perfect your skill as a beginner. So it was a tournament, and Chris said, "What do you think?" I said, "Well, let's use the historical option and see what happens." So now you've got, but these are not beginners now. Guys in the WBC, this tournament actually, some of them are really good players. I would be defeated by them or defeat them only by the barest of margins now, right? So these are good players. So if you give a top-notch player this incredibly strong hand, I even wrote an article about this back in, C3I 27, how to use a strong opening hand. They had created this sort of a rapid attack of the China-Burma-India theater, which kind of like freaked a bunch of people out if they hadn't seen it before. They go, "What the hell?" And they were like shut down and they were blown out, and they said the game's, I lost, and they would surrender, and I was like, okay. So everybody comes, "Mark, Mark," I was like, Daddy, it's broken. Oh my God. After all these years. I said, well, first off, I've seen all this before, but here's what we're going to do. So we ran over on CSW, where I think most of the really strong players hang out and that I play with. And what we did was I said, I put out 2 hands of cards. One was an even more powerful Japanese hand. Here's the Allied hand. And let's play it out and see how this thing works. So we did all that. And what was discovered, and it was from a guy, by the way, he's actually a pretty strong player, but not a guy I knew before. I think his name was Greg or something. He goes, "What about this?" And we started discovering a lot of allied responses that I hadn't even thought of or seen, because, they were once you see what they're doing, you go, okay, here's what they're stealing activations to go attack earlier, but they're leaving things in the Dutch East Indies untouched. And all of a sudden it was like, oh wow, we could do this counterattack with the British in Malaya that I never saw before. Well, that was a surprise. And oh, by the way, you could do this, you could do that. And so all of a sudden we came up with all these new maneuvers, like we enhanced, that's why I'm actually writing an article for my next column, replayability and balance. And so what we find is resident within the game were resources that were yet unexplored because of this new way of attacking. So now we had a new way of defending and counterattacking. And then we played I played everybody. I played the Allies, I let them play the Japanese, and they played the open hand just so I could see the conversation. And my cards were hidden, but it didn't matter. I didn't have I didn't have extraordinary cards.
Right.
And we played it out, and I don't know how much you know in chess, but in chess, like, you can sacrifice a piece as long as you gain, territorial compensation.
Yes.
You got to get some. You got to get if I give up a pawn or a minor piece, what am I getting for it? Do I get a big attack that win the game and all that? So what ended up happening was they went after the CBI, and every time they kept saying, "When's he going to respond to our attack?" I just ignored them.
For sure.
I ignored their attack, and I did a whole bunch of different moves that they hadn't seen before. And I had a staff of 2, Francisco and Joel were on my side. But I knew what I wanted to do. And then at the end of the turn, on the last card, we relieved the Philippines in plain orange, which is very rare to do. So all
Okay.
of a sudden, MacArthur's back in supply. The Dutch East Indies haven't fallen. Malaya hasn't fallen. They got a good position in Burma, but all of a sudden, if I was playing a campaign game, they were busted. And by the way, I had it so that guaranteed at the end of turn 2, Burma would be back in supply, and all these troops were going to flow in on turn 4, and they couldn't stop it. And I showed them how they couldn't stop it. So they spent all that effort, and it was a blown game for them. So I said, I'm okay with this attack. I don't need to change any rules. It's just,
Well, it's just like they hadn't seen this attack before. They hadn't seen this counter for said attack because no one had given reason for that to come up, right?
And so, but again, it was a true experiment. We did it in a controlled way, and we looked at it, and a lot of people were, when a lot being like, maybe 15 people were participating who knew what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it, I said, okay, we're good. The game, the meta game, as Richard Garfield called it, has been rebalanced. There are responses that are not. We had developed a style of play over a decade, and now somebody kind of perturbed that and said, "Oh, we got it now. We broke it." And he goes, "Well, no, look, we unbroke it
without having to adjust the game."
No, but that's when you say, "Why do I play it all the time?" Because there is so much depth in mini games. I could name 100 games that have serious depth, and you have to play them. Chess, for example.
Sure.
My chess game is
or Go or anything like that. Yeah.
My chess game is eroded so badly, it's ridiculous. So, in fact, now on Sunday at 9:30, I'm going to start playing my son again, by Skype, just so we could get I won't embarrass myself. But the point is, there's so much depth to these games that if you play them over and over and over again, you don't get to the point where it's always the same. I'm still learning stuff. I'm still seeing things. It's still interesting narrative. So you say, why do you keep playing Empire of the Sun? Well, because there's still more juice in the.
I get that, and I have learned that, and I say it tongue in cheek with you because I understand. But the guys like Eric Brocious and Joe Huber and everything, when we would go over for game night, before all this came to be, on a Monday night, I would say half the time they're still playing 1846, and Eric and Joe, they have well over 200 plays of 1846, and because they know it, they can get it played in 2 hours, and they still see things that they've never seen before, and there's still things to try out and to experiment with, and I think that's amazing. I love that about well-designed games.
What would be cool, the game, there's a guy named his name is Tim. He goes under the handle of Board Game Bloke. Mm-hmm. He's an English guy who lives in California. I've played with a few times, and he showed me he has a journal. He has played Battlestar Galactica, which is one of my favorite multiplayer games. He literally has played it 500 times.
No, but it's one of your favorites, really.
Oh, fantastic game. I don't get to play it enough, but it's a. I mean, where else could you get to go? You're a Cylon. You're a Cylon. It's just,
that's awesome.
Oh, it's a fantastic. I play that at the drop of the hat. In fact, I've been trying to get a game going, but it's like a game that a lot of people haven't played in a long time, or they didn't like the series. There's a million reasons, but when you get a group of people who want to, we used to have at WBC every year, we used to play Battlestar Galactica. There were 3 games we played once every year. I played Viking Fury with a group every year at WBC. We played a game of Battlestar Galactica, and of course, my favorite conference game, Atlantic Storm. And
so you mentioned that.
Yeah.
I have Pacific Typhoon sitting up here,
and I play and last year we used Pacific Typhoon instead of
Atlantic Storm.
Yeah. So I'll play either one of those. They're great games. It's bridge for war gamers.
It really, seriously, that's so spot on. And I've gotten it played before all this came about 2 or 3 times with the local group. It's a hoot. Oh, it's a blast. It's so much fun. I actually made it to the semifinals at WBC the year I went.
That's impressive.
And I couldn't roll a 1 twice, and if I don't, then I make it to the finals. Rolled a 1 twice.
You had the Bismarck or something.
Yeah, it was.
Where you get the dice.
Oh, it was terrible. Oh, I'm still bitter about that. It still pisses.
like I said, the two, it's a toss up what goes on my gravestone. It's either going to be the dice love no one or follow the sequence of play. I'm not sure which way I'm going to go yet. It's amazing. I've been getting rules questions on games, for a long time. I'll tell you a funny story. I might have told you this story before.
I don't care. Tell it again. Go ahead.
I used to be the rules editor for SPI.
Yep.
You remember the famous self-addressed stamped envelope, the SASE,
Right. Yes.
So I've been working there for like, I don't know, 6-8 months or whatever. And Dunnigan walks in my office. He goes, "Congratulations, you're the new rules editor for SPI." I go, "Oh, thanks. Who is it now?" He goes, "Frank it used to be the rules editor. You're taking over for him. Go see him. He'll give you whatever the backlog is." I said, "Okay." I'll go down the hall. Frank was Frank Davis, designer of Wellington's Victory. Brilliant designer, a character on his best day. I mean, just a real interesting fellow. So I go, "Frank," and Frank, for some reason, I never touched him, but Frank always thought I was going to hit him. I don't know why.
You're not a violent guy, Mark.
Like, "Frank, I'm not going to hit you." So I said, "Dunnigan just says I'm the rules editor now. He says you have a couple that haven't been answered." He goes, "Oh yeah." So imagine he's got a file cabinet.
Oh, Jesus.
No. 4 or 5. I can't remember. I think it's a standard 4-drawer file cabinet. He opens up the top one. The envelopes are stuffed. It's not like they're in order. There's just envelopes stuffed down like a cube of paper. Every drawer was the same. I go, "Okay, I'll be back." So I go back into the back room and I get like a garbage bag.
Okay.
I hold the bag open. I said, "Frank, put the envelopes in the bag." So he reaches in and it took us like 30, 40 minutes to get them all out of the file cabinet into the bag. The bag weighs.
It looks like Santa's bag, right? Yeah.
And so I take the bag, and you got to know, I have a weird sense of humor. So I go to Dunnigan. So I get the bag and I put it in my office, but I don't tell Dunnigan. I go to Dunnigan and say, "Jim, here's the deal. I'm happy to do the rules question. Like I have a choice. I happen to be the rules editor for SPI, but I need the R." And it was like every Tuesday or Wednesday I think it was Tuesday. Every Tuesday afternoon for about 2 hours was the R&D meeting, and so I said, I need all the backlog answered by the designers. He goes, "I'll tell you what, we got the R&D meeting in a couple hours. We'll have the meeting. When it's over, I'll turn it over to you. We'll hand out the envelopes, and then we'll all answer them, and we'll be all caught up." I said,
"Oh, awesome!" And he has no clue.
I did not hit no clue. So now.
And real quick, hold on. Jim Dunnigan, head of SPI, for those that don't know.
Dunnigan, Revan's in the room. Yeah, the whole. Yeah. Everybody's. The R&D meeting was like 15 or 16 people. So who's at the meeting? It's Jim Dunnigan. It's Revan Simonson. It's Irad Hardy, who was head of R&D. Brad Hessel, who was the deputy. Joel Balakowski, Richard Berg, Frank Davis, of course. Ed Curran, me, of course. Every designer was in the room, all 16 of us. It was about 16 of us.
Wow.
So I walk in, and so then he goes, "Hey, listen, before we're done, we got another half hour. Mark's going to answer some rules questions, and we're done." So I go back. I had it in the hallway. I come out, and I just
I'll be right back.
Whoosh. And now there's a pile. I mean, there's literally a small, and everybody's sitting there going like, and Berg, of course, is in rare form as always. He goes, whatever he was saying, I couldn't even repeat it. Hey, hang on a second. We got to bring him into this picture here. Hang on.
And no, it's cocktail hour. You can repeat it. So there you go. Rest in peace,
keep his picture here.
Yes.
So Richard goes, "I can't believe, Davis, you let this get like this." So then, literally, we were there. So this is like about 4:00 in the afternoon. We were there to at least 10 or 11. And literally, you reached your hand in, you grabbed it, and they go, and you look at what the game was, and you go, "Hey, Davis, this is your piece of crap," and they hand it over. And they go, "Hey, Berg, this is your problem." So we were sitting there, and you'd answer the question. Of course, the commentary on the questions was, it was X-rated, it's stupid. I cannot believe he couldn't figure this out. It's just going on.
It's the same thing that happens behind the scenes, no matter where you are. Because I'm sure you get rules questions still, and you're like, "Are you kidding me? It's right there in the rule book." Or yes,
I've learned. This might have cured me of that actually long ago. Look, the answer is we do our best,
sure.
but they're complicated games, and it's easy. And by the way, the audience now, a lot of my audience, at least probably close to half, English is not their first language.
Yep.
So so you got to be very. I want to be clear. I do not hold a grudge. I just answer the questions, and if it's in the rules, and sometimes somebody goes, I don't understand this. Well, they'll tell me you should have worded it this way for me. I say, all right, well, that's fine.
Fair enough. All right, sure. Right.
I'll take it under advisement. But the point was, we were there all night. They called in pizza and sandwiches, and and it was a hoot. It was one of the most funniest nights of my life. And we literally answered, had to be a couple of thousand rules questions. I mean, literally. That's why I got the job. Frank hadn't answered a rules question like in forever. I remember one line, and Berg, when he goes, "Hey, Frank, this one's 4 years old. Do you think he's still alive? Do you think he's still playing the game? Do you think he cares anymore?" I mean, that's how bad it was. So, and of course, after that, I set up a whole system. Like, I would get the rules questions, and I would literally, I had a pad, and I would go, "Berg, here are 3 rules questions," and you have to hand them back to me, and you don't get off the list until I get them back and I mail them. So I had a list, and then everybody got into the. So then we were on schedule after that. I'm very good at logistics. I'm not going to fool around. These people deserve to have their rules questions answered. And God damn it, if I give you 3 questions, answer them, and I'll know you did because you handed them back to me. And so things got really good after that. We were never behind again. But
Mark Herman, taskmaster. So
it's all about organizing the troops and getting them moving in the same direction on time.
Well, obviously Jim knew what he was doing when he gave it to you.
I think he was actually didn't have any other answer in his mind, but maybe he thought I could do it. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And also I had a way of, I was young and I was not going to take, I was like, if I had to give questions to Ira, I said, Ira, my boss, I go, could you answer these 2 questions and just tell me when you're done, I'll come pick them up, Sometimes I would sit there and go, well, you can answer them right now if you want. They're not in any of them, and I'd just stand here, But it was just one of those things. But, like I said, that nowadays, somebody gets a game, they're writing rules questions before they even read the rules. It's like,
yes.
How does this work? Or what I'm going to tell you, I design games. Some of them, I remember somebody getting mad at me about Fort Sumter. They said, this game is really kind of trivial and, it's got no theme and it kind of sucks. And it's not a Mark Herman game. And then I get letters from like all of these other people go, finally a game my wife really likes and she understands it. And we played in 20 minutes. And so the answer is it takes a village, right?
Sure.
Fort Sumter has a following that is not my normal following, but a lot of people will play the heck out of that game. And now it was number 4 I saw on sales out on the electronic game sales in Steam. It's now 4th.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so on the war game side.
Yeah, of course.
I don't think it's a war game, but it's like right up there with with Twilight Struggle. So people are going like, oh wow, here's a cool game. Wow, it plays really well. Oh, okay, I'm having a good time. I enjoyed myself.
And not only that, but I see it as doing a service to the hobby, because if now people are like, oh wow, there's this, what else is there? Whether it's a Mark Herman game, GMT, whatever, doesn't matter. It broadens the horizon of more players.
I designed it for my wife and her friends. That they would. And they kept saying, it's really hard. And by the way, my wife will still tell you that she thinks Fort Sumter is really too complicated. And I can tell you, I find you 100 guys that think it's too simple.
Right.
You can't make everybody happy all the time. But I like the fact that you can do different things. And, I did that. And now I'm going to do some, now I'm doing Pacific War. So Fort Sumter, Pacific War.
Apples, giraffes, whatever. Yeah.
And by the way, if you played Fort Sumter and you thought it was a little bit difficult, please do not buy Pacific War. Don't do it. Don't do it. Give it away. Don't do it, man.
Well, and I imagine it's going to be a pretty sizable box.
We're actually talking, right now, I think a 3-inch or 3 1/4 is the biggest they make. It might get to 4. I don't know. Tony's working on the components right now. As soon as they get the component price, it'll go into P500. But it's gonna be a beast. It's gonna have two mounted maps in it. So that takes up. That's already like that.
Sure. Oh yeah, it takes up
It's
half the
got
box. Right.
it's
Yeah.
got at least 8 counter sheets. You know,
What
you know.
size counters are they? Half inch
Uh,
or 5
no,
eighths?
there's a size in between. I think there's 7/16.
Okay. All right.
They're not the
Sound
they're
like
not the big.
sockets all of a sudden, or wrenches.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know, but they're bigger than the old half inch, but not by much. But we would have made them bigger, but then it would be like 20 counter sheets. It's just like,
Yep.
and the other thing is the maps would then be 4 maps, and I got to keep it within. It's people are gonna the people will complain. I can't read the numbers, and I say I don't know what to tell you, but don't if your eyesight's not good, don't buy Pacific War. Yeah, exactly. I have glass. I have a magnifying glass if I need it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's no
But
shame in that. I mean, for the first time in my life, I had to break out readers. So,
yeah.
hey,
You see,
last I checked, Father Time's undefeated.
yeah. So in Versailles though is a nice lighter game. Plays very fast. It's gotten. I actually think that one has a shot for two reasons. One, in a weird way, it's going to come walking on the market when there's not a lot of new product. Finally, there's so much new product coming out all the time, and a game would have to be extraordinary to catch on. I think Versailles has it. I think Versailles will get a better shot just because it's that kind of easy, fast, strategic, thinky kind of game, but not so much that it burns your brain out. Very simple to learn. And it won't have 48,000 new releases going up against it. At Essen. So it might have a shot.
Speaking of which, like we were talking about earlier, like Origins just got postponed. I think eventually it gets canceled. I'm worried about Essen.
Gen Con. Well, I'll be honest with you. I am, as I told you, I don't think Essen's going to happen unless there's a vaccine.
I can't see any way there's a vaccine that fast.
I don't see anybody wanting to see 200,000 people get together into that conference hall again.
It is the pinnacle of the year for me. It is the most
well, I was
important.
Going to be there. I actually I was booked to be there this year. I was going to release a new game at Essen, but I'm not going. I will go. I got to wait till, Governor Cuomo, who's an amazing governor of our state here, who's I think keeping us all alive at this point because of his, really diligence. He said it like this: is that this is a period of time, and I'm just going to wait till the period of time is over.
Yep.
And we get into the vaccine phase of the game. And as soon as we're in the vaccine phase, then everything will be fine as far as I'm concerned.
I think that's smart. I think it's reasonable to feel that way. For me, I don't see any way Gen Con happens. I don't see any. I don't think Origins is going to happen. Essen, like I said, is a super important thing for me and the show, but I think that's highly suspect at
Let me put it this way.
best.
What I've learned is I am not relying on the prognostications of anybody but myself now. As I think I understand this problem very, very well. As I said, there's a whole chapter in my book on this from the work I used to do. And so based on that, I got my plan. Now, I wish everybody well, and I hope that whatever the various powers that be make decisions that are smart and well considered. But I'm not playing. I'm going to do my own game.
Somebody, I forget who said it a couple weeks ago, maybe it was last week here on one of the shows that I was hosting here. And they said if a politician, a doctor, or someone else gives you advice when it comes to health stuff, follow the doctor or, something like that. And just common sense. Use your head, be smart, be safe out there or in there, as it were.
Yeah, I'm definitely sticking to that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm looking forward. I probably will. I don't know if I'm going to have time. It's already 10:30. I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight, but hopefully this played I have will get me through a turn of Here I Stand. I mean, I know the basics, but I haven't played in a while. It should be. I'm the Pope, by the way.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask.
I think I gotta remember how the ecclesiastical debates work, because I think that's how I fight the Protestants. Is
right.
Like,
yep.
Put them at the stake and that kind of good
the
stuff.
The last time I played Here I Stand, I played as the Ottomans. I was Suleiman, and Suleiman ended up in the dungeon of the Pope. Didn't go well for me.
No, it's not good.
Did not go well for me at all.
Yeah, They asked me if I wanted to be the Habsburgs. I said, you know what? I haven't played in so long. You don't want a weak Habsburg player in that game. I said, so no. I said, give me the Pope, or the Protestants. I actually like playing the Protestants the most, but I find actually most of my wins in Here I Stand come with the Protestants.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Um,
you guys got to get into England. You got to turn the Scottish Protestant, and then things go your way very quickly.
Trevor asked in chat, said, the U.S. is notorious for continuing with imperial measurement, while other countries, especially manufacturing, use metric. How difficult is the translation in design and in publishing? Publishing side, I don't know how much do you do on this as far
Well, I
as.
remember I used to run a publishing company.
Well, I get fair point, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah.
So,
All right.
so the answer is it's irrelevant is the answer because you're giving the mechanicals, the printing has its own registration marks on it, and the die that you make to cut it is all set to, so it has no effect on anything.
Okay. All right. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
everything that you use as your materials, and you could use metric, you can use English system. Um, we use English system here, but the Chinese who use metric have no problem using it because it's all in the artwork. The artwork's set up a certain way, and that's how it is. It's not like
Yeah.
you're using some standard. You're not trying to do anything. You're not standardizing anything in game publishing. It's all.
I guess that makes sense because every counter sheet's going to be different, right? So that's a good
Or,
point.
or a company will have a standard counter sheet that they use. McGowan has a standard, half inch, 5/8 inch, half, for his C3I magazine. Every company has a standard that they use. I created, when I did Churchill, I hate clipping counters. I just think it's crazy. So I like sprue-less counter sheets, like, having Churchill where you get to punch the count, you punch them out. It's a punch board, you punch them out.
Yep.
And the counters are not next to each other. You're leaving a lot of cardboard. Now for Pacific War, I wanted to do that, but quite frankly, again, it'd be at 16 counter sheets because
Right.
it'd
Yep.
be stupid. So, I insisted that they get a new die so it'll cut really well. So you should have, if unless you're a fanatic about it, you wouldn't have to, which I'm
Counter
not.
clip, right? All right. Which, let's face it, there are a lot of there's a massive thread on BGG about counter clipping. So yes,
There always is.
yes, always. All right. One more question here. Franny asked earlier, and I think this is interesting. The commercial game design versus simulationist modeling. How do those two things differ as far as when you design a game, whether it's for the DoD or whether it's Churchill, say for instance?
Yeah, it's funny. That's the essence of the talk I'm giving, and I'm actually thinking about that very question. So it's a great question. Whoever came up with it.
Franny did, yes.
Yeah, good job. So I have been very successful in DoD getting people to play manual games. Why are manual games better than computer games for the DoD? Okay, that's a simple question.
Okay.
So the three things that drive cost in a computer game are the graphics, right?
Sure.
The graphics is a huge amount of money.
Yep.
Then there's the interface. How do I interface with it? And then there's the underlying
The
model.
coding itself, right?
Well, yeah, but remember, all of those things working together, right? I got to be able to interact with the simulation, the graphics, and then there's the the actual simulation itself. Okay.
Okay.
A board game. And by the way, every time you want to change code in a computer simulation, that's not like, oh, I'll have it done in 10 minutes. You change code, you got to test. I mean, it's a process to change code. It could be weeks, months, cost, all that, right? So when I was working for DARPA, which was the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, doing a lot of gaming, I got them into using manual games. And so what we were doing was, I can change the graphics. It's all paper. I can change you don't want a hill there? Look, it's gone. I can do anything I want with real maps. Just put a real map down. I don't have to make anything up. We just play on a real map. The interface is, I have a hand, I have eyes. I grab piece, I move piece. That's my graphic interface. So I solved now I just got rid of 85% to 90% of the cost of a computer simulation just went away. And by the way, I can change the simulation piece. Oh, that new sensor is 85%, not 83%. Here, scratch it out. We're playing with 85.
Right.
And we also had the advantage that we could use classified combat models for like gunfire and how really real ballistic kind of models could be used on the side for some of that stuff. So we literally we could play a round of a game with technologists. They could say, "Hey, I want to change this from this to this," and instead of that being like we'll get together in a month, we're ready to go now. I literally could make the change in real time, and we could keep playing.
Right.
That cuts the cost and gets the thinking going, and lets you do everything you want to do. Much better than computer simulation. Now, when you get down to it's a final system and you want to train somebody to fly it, you don't need a simulation, you need an emulation. It's got like if I'm going to learn to fly like an airplane simulator for like an airline or for a bomber or whatever it is, the guy sitting in the cockpit with real instruments and moves, that's a different kind of simulation. And not really simulations, those are more like emulations. And we've done some things where we used, if you wanted to have a radar work, we could feed into the radar software an actual signal and have it react to an actual signal, even though we're not moving the dish around.
Right.
Like, used to be a helicopter maintenance guy, right?
Fixed wing, but yeah, F-18s.
F-18s, right. So an F-18's got some very sophisticated radars and sensors on it, right? Well,
Back then it was APG-65 and APG-73, but yeah.
There you go. So we could take the actual module that feeds the radar, and where the radar would feed in a real signal from the real world, we could feed in a modulated emulation of a signal that would be perfectly correct. And the module then, the HUDs and everything would work exactly right without having an actual radar in the air.
Right.
It would work exactly the same way. That's an emulation. So to answer the question, they're different disciplines, but it depends on what you're trying to do. So when you do a war game is an anthropological exercise with humans. I don't really care about the fidelity of some of the underlying. I can get simulations to, big war game simulations to run tanks against tanks and all that stuff. So to give an example, let's say NATO, like the Baltic states, comes up a lot. So let's say you wanted to get 6 brigades of armor into the Baltics to stop a Russian attack, right? Once I get the 6 brigades there, I can run a combat model and see what the answer would be. They attack, and they got combat models that do a reasonable job of all that. The really interesting question that can't answer is, what happens when the first guy, there's no 6 brigades there yet, what happens when the first battalion gets on a plane to fly there? What happens then? If you can fly the first battalion in and then the 6 brigades in, there's going to be no war. But if there's going to be a war, as soon as the guy gets on the first battalion, gets on the plane and leaves, that's when they're going to do something. I ran an exercise with this guy, Andy Marshall, a long time ago. It was about Star Wars. So President Reagan, when is it? 1983, I think it was. He gave the famous Star Wars speech. You can look it up. I remember the exact.
I know it's early 80s.
It's early 80s.
I don't remember it, but I'm familiar with it because I was.
So Reagan gets up and he says, "We're going to do this. We're going to build this star." He thought, his mind, he's president and smart guy. He says, mutually assured destruction is unethical. I cannot, in good conscience, the President of the United States, decide that the way I'm going to protect you is that if they kill all of you, I'm going to kill all of them. He said that was unethical. So we need to have a defense system. That was the rationale for it. Totally reasonable, logical way to look at it. So he gives a speech saying we're going to put up these, space stations and all that stuff, and we're going to defend ourselves. So the conversation immediately goes to, well, leakage was that they decided that, if one missile gets through and hits LA, it's going to kill, 10 million people. That's a defeat. So the system has to be perfect. And of course, everybody's going, let's price out a perfect system. That's going to cost, I don't know, more than the GDP of the United States.
Right.
So I was asked to come in and run a series of war games. And the question on the table was not what does a perfect system look like, but if we started building a system, when would it start to actually matter? Because as my Andy Marshall said to me, he goes, I understand what happens when we get the entire perfect thing up and running, but what did the Soviets do when we put the first one into space? What is the reaction to the first one when you only have one?
Okay.
That's really the issue, because a war game can look at that. I can run a simulation about if I had all these battle stars up and you shoot missiles and
sure, right.
lasers and spacecraft going
I've seen
on.
that movie. It was War
Yeah, I
Games.
saw the movie.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Saw the movie. But what happens when you put the first? That's what a war game does. That's different than a computer simulation. It's just different. And so we ran the exercise, and the test game was just to get a baseline. We said the United States has 15% defenses. And the idea was this is not going to matter, and we're going to run the simulation. Then every game we're going to add 10% until we get to a number that starts to change the equation. Right?
Okay.
It's all in my book. But the mind blowing thing that happened was that 15% defenses changed everything. And you can read it in the book. I can get into the technical details, but it changed everything. And all of a sudden, any level of defense was valuable, even if it wasn't perfect. Changed the entire equation. They were able to build a program, and I think it contributed a huge amount to the discussion. But that was one of the most famous war games I ever ran.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that the first one that you did, or no?
No, I've been doing it for a while at that
Okay.
point. But this is one of those moments when, I've run, I don't know how many war games, 500-600 war games in the Pentagon, but that was,
wow.
One of the top three, that was in the top three.
That must have been surreal to experience.
It was surreal to everybody. It was one of the few times where I didn't see it coming.
Well, apparently no one did.
No, nobody did. We didn't see it coming. We didn't.
Wow. So okay. So hold on. When you're designing this, right? Do you not see it then? I mean,
well, I don't know what the decisions are going to be. I don't know what they're going to. Remember, I'm not. I have become, because I've been in all these war games. It's like I got multiple graduate degrees in this stuff, but I wasn't a military guy per se. But I've dealt with the experts on all these different topics. So the guys that were in the room were all strategic, nuclear guys. They knew everything about the topic. And so, and I got to live, for about a 2-month period, I was living with these guys practically. So at the end of the day, you just pick up the whole thing. I'm pretty smart, and I pick up stuff, and then I can converse with them. And of course, I had a graduate degree in it, so it wasn't like I was totally unfamiliar with the strategic nuclear warfare is one of those things that nobody's an expert because nobody's ever done it.
Sure.
So
it's all theoretical, right?
So it's probably one of the few areas that I'm an actual expert in, because I dealt with some of the, they were near the end of their lives, but what's his name? Oh, God, my mind's gone. But I dealt with all the big guys at one time. One of my mentors was a guy named Tom Rona, who was Reagan's deputy science advisor. He used to work with me to make me better. He's like one of my mentors.
This is amazing, man. This is fantastic to listen to.
So I know, and then I've worked in logistics, and I know maintenance. One of the funniest stories, we were doing this war game once, and it was NATO versus Warsaw Pact, and you'll appreciate it because you worked in fixed wing, so you'll appreciate what happened, and and let's just say, without the details of the scenario, everything is broken. I mean, like really broken. And we're trying to figure out how many sorties can the Air Force get into the air? And we had an F-15 jock in the room, and he goes, if I got one engine, if I got 6,000 feet of straight, pavement, and I got one weapon on the rail, I'm a sortie. And of course, he's a fighter guy, right? You've seen those guys, right?
Yes.
And so that became the definition of a sortie. If you can get a plane in the air with any kind of munition, it was a sortie. And in that environment, that was significant because the other side had the same problem, right? They can't put a plane in. You got to get the plane in the air with a munition, then you have an airplane in the air with a munition.
Right.
And if the other side has none, then you have air superiority. So the only guy up there. I got it. I win.
We not to go too far off the rails, but one of the coolest experiences I ever had when I was in the Marine Corps is we were deployed. We were the first Marine unit ever deployed to the country of Hungary. This is when when Kosovo was going down. So that is in '99.
Yeah, I did a lot of work with UAVs in that period.
Okay. I didn't know what a UAV was back then, but we were deployed 43 miles from the Serbian border, and it was probably the most serious
Well, we were bombing them. It was real. It was
Yeah,
real.
it was the most serious time that I've ever had while I was in the Marine Corps. I never went to Afghanistan, never went to Iraq, nothing like that, because it bookended when I was in, right? Desert Storm was before, and then everything else was after I got out. And one of the most amazing, just cool experiences that I ever had was the Hungarian Air Force have MiGs.
Oh yeah.
And I got to sit in the cockpit of what was it? I think it was a MiG-25 and a Su-17, Su-27, sorry, Su-27.
Well, the 27 is a little bit more modern than the 25, but yeah.
Oh my God, that was amazing. I mean, to sit in a MiG, right? And then to watch these guys, and these guys would show off. We had like an impromptu air show at the end of our deployment there after things had essentially ended there in Kosovo. And some of the Hungarian pilots were just insane. Like one of the Su-27 pilots would go up, stall both engines, hammerhead it over, and then reignite before he crashed. And like I'm standing next to our pilots going, he's fucking nuts. And it was just one of those cool experiences. Like it wasn't planned that there was going to be like an air show type thing, but
the moment happened, you know.
yeah. And so that was a lot of fun.
It's well, he's Dr. Jonathan Cale, but he was he's Captain Jonathan Cale. He was an F-14 jock, and he came when I was first married. He was in a squadron. I think he wasn't yet operational, but he was in training still, and he flew one of his first cross countries with the F-14 from wherever he was out of California back to Andrews.
Okay.
And he stayed with us for the weekend, and then I drove him back to the plane. I actually got to sit in the cockpit, and he put me in the cockpit of an F-14. He said, "Look, don't touch anything, and especially don't touch that red button." That was the ejector seat. I said, "Yo," that's like, it's like.
They're all pinned and they're all safe and everything, but yes, yeah.
Don't fuck around. So I sit down, I sit in the seat, and I've sat in the cockpit, and so it was kind of cool. So when I drove him back, he says, "Go to the end of the runway and wait." So I take my car, I go to the end of the runway, and then what he does is he goes down the runway, he stands it up on its tail, and goes straight up.
That's awesome.
And it was like, wow.
Yeah.
He had to get clearance from I'm sure he had to get clearance from
to be able to do that kind of takeoff.
It was something to see. And the noise, you've been around those engines, when those two engines kick into like whatever he was kicking them into, it's like.
Well, when I was deployed on aircraft carrier, I made 2 deployments on aircraft carriers. On the second one, I was what they would call a final checker. And a final checker is a guy that basically you have 2 of them. One goes down the left side of the aircraft, one goes down the right side of the aircraft as it's taxiing up onto the catapult. So it's moving forward, and you've got your hands looking at everything, making sure nothing's leaking, nothing's stuck, nothing's sticking out that's obviously wrong. And then you get back to the engine, and I'm about as far from me as I am from that camera, so maybe 6-8 feet.
And you can't go any further. You got blown across the deck.
Right, and so you give thumbs up after the pilot does his wipeout. All the moving surfaces move. You make sure there's no leaks, nothing sticking, anything like that. You give thumbs up. The other side, who's close to the CAT officer, gives thumbs up, and the CAT officer shoots him off the deck. And the pilots have their hands up on the canopy. They're not allowed to hold the stick, and the throttles are in full afterburner. And so I'm sitting 6 to 8 feet away from the back of the turkey feathers of a plane when it's in the afterburner. The most amazing thing. It is unbelievable. It's part of the reason I don't hear very well, even though I had double hearing protection.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And it's a constant shoot. As soon as that plane shoots off, the jet blast deflectors are going down, you're moving out of the way, and the next aircraft is taxiing up. What sucks is whenever your plane, your F-18, is behind an F-14 Tomcat. Now, the F-14s have been retired now, and now it's all the bigger version of the F-18, which is the E and the F, and I was working on Charlie's at that time. But the Tomcats, their turkey feathers, their engines are massive. Yeah. They are huge aircraft. You get caught behind one of those, and the plane pivots on you. All of a sudden, you're like, shit. And you get down onto the deck, grab a pad eye, and hope your skin doesn't melt because the engine is on you. So you're constantly doing this up there, and
Well, they
it's
say it's the most dangerous place in the world.
100%. We had a typical cruise or a 6-month deployment. It's called a cruise.
So only one guy got killed.
No, 5 to 6. I mean, it's a city of 5,000 people. So over the course of 6 months, losing 5 or 6 people is pretty normal in a town.
Both cruises that Cale was on, somebody got killed. But one of them, because they were already coming back in, and he was the OD. He was the one who escorted the body back. But what happened was, missed the wire. Plane was going over the side, and they ejected, but the canopy went across the deck and caught a kid. That's what happens.
So, for those that don't know, when on an aircraft carrier, there's 4 wires back there that the plane, they drop their tail hook and they come in and they land on. It's the most dangerous place in the world to be, ever. You should not be up there. There is a line that you cannot cross. If you cross, you get to go talk to the air boss, who's second in command on the ship. You don't want to do that. Thankfully, I never had to meet the man.
Yeah.
But being 18, 19, 20 years old at the time and just being fascinated by this stuff, I'd go up there and watch them land. And I'm literally standing right behind the line, and the catapult or the wire is 2 feet away from me. And these wires are about yay thick, and they're steel cable, and they're with enough tension to stop a, I don't know, 20,000-pound aircraft in the span of, I don't know, 80 feet.
And they snap sometimes.
Oh, they do. And when they snap, they go through everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Like you, if you were standing there.
Oh, you wouldn't even feel it. It would go right through you. Yeah. So horrible place to be, but amazing at the same time. One more story on this.
Sure.
We were, this was in 95. Yeah, it was on my first cruise. And this is when Yugoslavia was breaking up. We were doing circles into Adriatic and doing missions over Yugoslavia. And, well, okay, 2 stories. Number 1, when war became real to me, I never had to dodge bullets. So I never saw war in that regard. But being aviation and being avionics, we had our secret clearance, and we got to watch the tapes from the FLIR video, the forward-looking infrared pods that we'd install and troubleshoot and everything on the aircraft. We watched the video one night of when...
Blobology.
Huh?
We used to call that blobology.
Okay, all right. When one of our pilots got back, and one of his missions was to drop a bomb on a barracks. Mm-hmm. And I'm 19 years old, and it just really hit me for the first time that when I saw this bomb go down and explode and the building essentially is no longer there, that I'm thinking about my barracks back in Beaufort, South Carolina. And I was like, holy shit, like these are just kids my age, just hanging out, probably playing Xbox. Well, I guess back then it was PlayStation, but yeah, just chilling out, and next thing you know, gone. And that's when it really kind of hit me. I mean, really hit me what it is that we're doing out here.
Think about it, in the Gulf War, I never forgot, I think we took something like, I want to say 200-ish people were killed, which is, of course, 200 too many.
Sure.
But close to 100 of them, close to half of them, was a Pennsylvania water purification unit from the National Guard. They were sitting in their barracks.
Yep.
And a Scud missile launch, a Scud got through and hit the barracks. The majority of that was the unit that took the highest casualties in the Gulf War, as I recall. And, just like you said, they were sleeping. They were from, Pennsylvania North, National Guard. They cleaned water. They ran water machinery. Mm-hmm. And then they're all casualties in a battle because of a missile. The missile got through. So war is different than it used to be. It's these long-range missiles and all that. They just change everything.
Yeah, very much so. Last one to kind of piggyback on the recovering of aircraft. I have more of my tonic coming in apparently. All right, awesome.
Hi, cool. Jess.
Thanks. Mark says hi, by the way.
Mark.
So That's good. That's good.
That's it?
Yeah, that's
That's
it.
all?
Yeah, that's
All
it. Thanks. So here we go. So our commanding officer had gone out on a mission and had some hung ordnance. Hung ordnance. So
Did drop
bombs, missiles,
minutes
whatever,
ago.
they're held on by two hooks, and they have CADs, which basically when they hit the button to drop the ordnance, whatever it is, or to launch the ordnance,
They pull in.
the CADs basically they're small little explosions that blow the hooks open and it goes. Easy enough. Sometimes CADs don't blow. If the CAD doesn't blow, it's hung. So it's got one hook holding it on. Could be the front one, could be the back one, but only one hook. So it's not exactly armed, but it is. So, but he's got to land, and he can't get it to drop. So they clear the flight deck, and our shop was directly below the flight deck. So our ceiling was the flight deck. And we're watching on the closed caption TV, which is basically this little camera that's embedded in the flight deck. And we're watching him come in, and there's cameras pointing at different directions and everything. And he hits, and the impact of him hitting, the ordnance drops off. So here is, I think it was a harm missile. Don't quote me on that. It might have been an AMRAAM. I can't remember. But this missile comes going, skids off the front of the landing of the flight deck and goes off into the ocean. And for that moment, you could have heard a fucking pin drop everywhere because there's a missile that just went skidding off your ceiling.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of surreal.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. During the Gulf War, even though I was asked I was on NPR radio, and at the time, and the war hadn't started yet, they were saying things like, they were saying they were throwing numbers like 20,000 casualties, 30,000
Right. Sure.
casualties.
Well, because all they had to go on was off of Vietnam, right? Going into the Gulf War.
Had to go up. They were running these combat models.
Right.
And I had another combat model that I was running, and called the theater analysis model. And when I ran my model, I said, I honestly, it was really counterintuitive. I said, I think that if we do what we're going to do, less than 1,000 casualties in the war. And these other guys are saying 20, 30,000 casualties. And I was in a meeting, it was a very high level meeting, and they said, Mark, give you a briefing. I said what I did and what I thought was going to happen. And it was like if I had, said to somebody something bad about their mother, and these guys all started yelling at me. And then this colonel who I work with, who I love, he managed to use the F word 3 times in a sentence as a noun, a verb, and an adjective. I thought that was amazing, the grammar of that. But the point of the story is that, I was obviously much closer to the truth. Nobody ever, I was acknowledged for that, but later on. But the main point of the story is, if you had the military, those same number of troops in the United States, peacetime, we would have lost about 3,000 due to car accidents, drunken driving.
Sure.
So in a weird way, we go to war and 2,700 kids don't get killed. Because
wow.
They were in the safest place in the world, because that was a study that was done. I was just going like, wow. I mean, just as an aside, this horrible thing that's going on out my window, literally, I don't know if you heard all the sirens in the background. There's no traffic accidents in New York City right now because there's no cars moving anywhere.
It's a fair point.
The air quality has never been better. I'm not saying this is better than that. I'd take that any day of the week. But there are these weird, like you can see LA now. 8 million cars.
Yeah. There's no smog, right? Yeah.
And you were saying this earlier. I think that a lot of people are going to say, why am I driving an hour in traffic back to have a meeting that I've been having in my house for the last 3 months?
Yep. Well,
I think the world's going to be different.
I hope we learn from this. I'm a lot more pessimistic, but I'm hopeful. I'm pessimistic in the reality of it, but I'm hopeful. So Martin Fowler, friend of mine and part of our group up here, who's a big to-do in the computer programming world.
Okay.
He works for a company that has global reach. They have offices all around the world. And he was scheduled to go to this global conference, which I don't know where it was. Maybe it was China, maybe it was Japan. It was somewhere not here.
Yeah.
And now this company, obviously no one's traveling. And so they're having to do this via teleconference. And I wonder, and we were talking about this, we had a group Zoom with my local group, just hey, how are you guys doing? I haven't seen you guys in a while. And so a bunch of us got together and just hung out for a little while. And he was talking about how if this goes successfully, does this show that, hey, maybe we don't need to fly, dozens of people halfway around the world, this and that, et cetera, et cetera. And so I wonder how this changes the world. I'm really...
Yeah, I think in that case, it'll be interesting to see if time zone matter.
And they've set up meetings and they've color coded because time zones, right?
Yeah, I used to run a very big organization that ran literally around the planet, and we used to hold all of our meetings at 4:00 in the afternoon in Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that is it was late in Europe, but still you could be up.
And early in the Far East, right?
Like crack of dawn in Korea.
Right.
And we could hold our meetings at that for 4 to 5. We could have a meeting where, the guys were getting up at 5 in the morning, but most of them had been in the army, so it didn't bother them.
Right.
And the guys in Europe, it was like, 11 o'clock, 10, 11 o'clock, and then they went to bed. So, but it was the only way I could hold a meeting with these people. But so that is the only real trick when you do many time zones.
Right. And they apparently had something like every time zone but one, I think, around the globe they're having to manage with this, which logistical nightmare. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But at the same time,
cost.
Very, very curious to see how this changes the world. Just it's surreal. Anyway. It's still in my day-to-day life doesn't feel completely altered because I work from home anyways, and the only real difference for me is I don't have people over to play games with. And obviously there's more things going on than that. Like, it's been forever since I've had a haircut. That's hence the hat.
Well, what do you think? I have the hat on too.
Yeah, right. I hear you.
I can't wait for my ponytail. I'm going to have a ponytail.
Okay, hold on. On the flip side of that, though, I worry about my barber, like legitimately, right? Because my barber, he cuts hair for a living, and he's also a personal trainer. You know what he's not doing right now? Those two things.
Yeah.
And so how is he going to be able to make a living? So I'm concerned for him. And it's hair. I don't care. Big deal, right? Yeah. But it's his way of making a living. So, I mean, it's like every little pebble, the ripples of it just go everywhere with this. And it's just...
Like I said, it's a period of time.
Right.
We will come out of this. We'll all sit in a room and play games with each other again. But in the meantime, I'll sit here with Richard.
There you go.
And we'll.
And I'll be honest. I mean, would it be great to be able to go over there, and play Empire of the Sun with you in person, give you a hug, and share a meal, shoot the shit, and have a blast.
Hug like Jess and you, just to be clear. But okay.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I would prefer to do that, but you know what? This isn't a horrible compromise.
I was with, I bought Jess dinner on her birthday. The last text.
Yes. So
last time I saw her, she looked good. She was having a good time.
Yeah, she's holding up well. She's got the kids going a little. I can't. To anybody out there that has kids, this is summer break times 100, I imagine, because they can't leave that. Like, you can't, like, here, go spend the night at so-and-so's house, or, hey, trade off with parents to where they can watch the kids and give you a little time away. And Jess has the kids half the time, and they're just in the house. Yeah, and she'll put them out in the, let them go out in the yard or whatever, or maybe they'll go for a walk somewhere. But it's still only a small, finite amount of time.
Yeah.
My heart goes out to all the parents out there that are dealing with this. Cause
I'm telling you, my heart goes out to everybody.
Oh yeah, obviously. But
I get now. If you heard all the sirens, the alternative, not so good.
100%. Everything's
Well,
relative,
believe it
right?
or not, I'm going to. My wife is. I think Carol's trying to go to bed, and she's right around the corner. So
Let's
I gotta,
call it a night. All right. So, Mark, thank you for doing this. This was fun. It was good to catch up with you as well, my friend. To everybody watching, I know we didn't get to a whole ton of questions, but I'll be honest, if you guys are watching this or listening to this, you just want to listen to Mark's stories anyways, just like I did. So I think we're fine with that. That was awesome. Thank you. Seriously, I'm glad that you were willing to do this. Real quick, tell folks how they can get in touch with you, because I know you're on Twitter, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, just I'm easy to get on Twitter. You can get me on Board Game Geek. I get geek mail all the time. That's usually the easiest way for people just to reach out to me if they have a rules question or they want to ask me a question or whatever. I get that all the time.
All right.
And I'm easy to find.
And on Twitter, it's Mark Herman
At
54.
Herman 54.
There you go. Awesome.
Year I was born.
All right. Tell the missus we send our best, and hope you guys.
All right, buddy.
All right. Take care. Be well. Take care, everybody. We'll catch you all later.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.